All right. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? How is it going? I am istherenoonelse. And the video I'm bringing you today, I wanted to talk about the CP tests, the proc set tests that have been happening on the PC NA and PC EU platform for about the last week and a half. I finally got to get on PC this last weekend, play some PvP, get my thoughts on it. And I have a lot. This is going to be a longer video. I'm going to try and make it as informative from my point of view and as entertaining as possible. But let's get down to the first thing, which isn't even the the most interesting part about it. People want to know, is performance better with these tests? They removed all procs in help to see if it has improved performance. Is it working? The answer is no. I don't think it is. No, you can shut off the video now. See you later. I'll catch you on the next one. No, I don't play a bunch of PC, and so I haven't noticed the difference. I thought it felt like the same, but I did a survey for my channel, and I wanted to get other people's reactions. When they play, what do they think Cyrodiil performance feels like? Is it better, or is it the same / worse? And overall, out of the people that voted, about 80% of the population believes it stayed the same or gotten worse, and about 18, 19, 20% believe that it's gotten better. So I'm not going to say that anybody's wrong because it's all subjective depending on what time you're on, but the vast majority of people that have voted have said that it's gotten worse. And so it stayed the same and gotten worse, or gotten worse. Sorry. Wow. Which is too bad. I will say that it's not really an apples to apples comparison, and this is something I really want to bring up right now in the beginning of the video, but they posted that the health-based, the group cross-healing, didn't have an impact on PvP, so they reverted it, and I disagree. I really do, because back in August and September, as you guys know, I had a death in the family, and I wasn't hopping on much. And part of the reason I wasn't hopping on much was I was just in a weird spot, right? You're just you're feeling a little bit more down. And so if you're going to go play a video game, you want to play a video game and have fun. And the game was so laggy and the performance wasn't very good that I just wasn't having fun, and I didn't really want to put myself in a situation where I was having less fun in a game than I would have doing anything else in my every day-to-day life. And so I really wasn't playing at all. I'd hop on once a week. I'd like my ass off. I'd hop off. That's basically what I would do for a couple months. And then they did the Cyrodiil tests, and they did the cross-healing thing, and there was still a lot of lag. It wasn't just all of a sudden performance got better, but in my opinion, the cross-healing really did help, because all of a sudden, in the last couple months, as you guys have noticed, I've played more. I've been posting more content, because at least some of the time when I hop on an open world Cyrodiil, an open world PvP, it's actually playable. There's been times when it's been pop locked 3 bars in each faction, and I'm still able to PvP. That didn't happen this weekend during the CP tests. And so I would like to see them do at least a week of tests with the healing changes reverted and no proc sets, so we have an apples to apples comparison. I would just like to see it personally for a week, just so we can see, because I think the stacking of those two things is an issue for 2 reasons. Number one, because of the removal of all the sets for this test, there's a lot less defensive healing sets, and so people are grouping up a little bit more. And because people are grouping up a little bit more and cross healing is more effective, they are more effective. So these balls are like the Indiana Jones rock. Actually, that's a bad example. Do you guys remember the movie Willow? This is an old ass movie. I don't give a shit. This is an old movie, one of my favorites. I don't care if you dislike Willow. I will ban you from my account, from my channel. I swear to God, I will ban you right now. Anyways, there's this part where Val Kilmer's character is rolling down this mountain, and it starts off with him rolling, and then he just generates this big snowball, and by the time he gets to the bottom, it's like this big ass snowball hay bale size thing. That's what Zergs kind of feel like in the no proc PvP campaign right now. They start off small and they start taking keeps, and they just generate momentum. They just keep generating momentum till all of a sudden you have a 30 or 40 man faction. The problem is, because Acuity, Vicious Death, Balorg, all these bomber sets don't currently work in PvP, there's no real hard counter to these bigger groups. You just get a big enough group to take them on. And sometimes you just can't do that because the group is so large. And so there's no real hard counter, and so people are stacking even more so now than what they were a couple patches ago, or in Markarth when the healing was reverted. So I think that is actually something to look at, because the aspect of how PvP functions now has changed a little bit more. People were stacking before, but now because they're stacking again 40, 50 deep, there's a lot more healing calculations going off because everybody's spamming radiating regen. That's why I would like to see a week of healing, like the healing changes reverted with no proc sets, so that we can test that and see, just so it alleviates my mind personally and a lot of other PvPers, because there's been a lot of my friends that I've talked to that they all kind of feel the same way. And if you feel this way, maybe I'll post something on the forums. I'll do this. I'm going to post something on the forums. I'll provide a link in my community thread. If you guys agree with me and you kind of want to see this, let's just be constructive, provide our comments, just say, hey, let's just dot this I, make sure we remove this possibility, because I do think this would actually improve performance. Get rid of the cross heals for a week. If performance is the exact same, we were wrong. We're the dumb community. You're the developers. You were absolutely right, but it doesn't hurt to try. It doesn't hurt to try. Yeah, I will definitely do that. I'm going to write a note right now. I just decided on the spot. That's how planned I am for my YouTube videos, guys. Sometimes that just kind of happens. So yeah, wanted to talk a little bit about that, and now we're going to dive into the more interesting stuff. What's the good part? What are the good things that have come out of the Cyrodiil tests? Well, number one, in my opinion, it's better PvP. The performance is the same, but the meta is so much more enjoyable. And the reason that is, we've, on my channel and on the forums and on other people's channels, we've harped about offensive proc sets a lot. And I've talked in previous videos about how powerful offensive proc sets, but even I myself have talked about how the defensive proc sets like Malabeth and Chokethorn, Earthgore, those types of defensive ones, I've talked about how they're more problematic. And even I feel like when I watch a lot of videos, people don't talk about those as much. I feel like I talk about those more than most people. But even I don't talk about them as much as I think I should, especially after these tests, because the meta is just so much more enjoyable because people aren't resetting fights based off of RNG. You're not randomly bursting somebody to low health and Malabeth goes off, or Earthgore goes off, or Troll King goes off, or Engine Guardian goes off because they hit a skill and they CC break on the ground, but they got the health proc, and so now they're going to be really hard to kill because they got the health proc. That stuff's not happening. And so they have to rely on their defensive mechanics to survive and their build to survive. And yeah, they have a lot more off healing, but even with the off healing, PvP against larger groups is just more enjoyable because it's not all of these different sets coming into play. And offensively, it's way more enjoyable too, because guys, I talked about this I'm going to talk about this in another video, but my win rate as like a solo 1vxer doesn't really change regardless of the meta. Whether it's a tank meta, whether it's a burst meta, whether it's no procs, we all live by the same rules in the meta. And so what's going to happen is my success in win rate is going to depend on my ability and skill level in that specific meta, and being able to find a powerful build and being able to do those sorts of things. So I found over the years, regardless of meta, my overall skill level really is what impacts whether I win or lose. And so when I'm talking about how I'm finding more fun playing this patch or during these no proc tests, it's not because I'm winning more. I want to get that clear. I've had some of my best experiences playing for hours and losing every single fight because the game's actually working and I'm just getting in good fights. I don't care if I win or lose fights, as long as it's an enjoyable PvP experience. It's not fun losing all the time, but yeah, if it's a fun fight, the fun doesn't have to be winning for me. But yeah, it's just really enjoyable. You run across a 4 or 5 man group and they're not light attacking and procking 10 different proc sets on you, and you're running around for your life trying to deal with this. Like, you can definitely tell right now that a lot of people are still trying to build in the same way that they were with procs. And I'll explain what I'm talking about. So with procs, you get so much free damage. I'm not going to harp too much about free damage. I've talked about this a lot. You just get free conditional damage based off of whatever condition it is that comes to you. And because those proc sets do not scale off your max stats, because they don't scale off of anything like that, they just exist, you can then just make the rest of your build as tanky as possible. And a lot of these builds, they can't kill somebody 1v1. They can't. But 2 or 3 of them can kill anybody because they have enough procs, and if you build in a certain way, you can essentially be unkillable to that one person. And so I was talking to Lobo about this a couple days ago. We ran across a Stamden, and he was very clearly building in the same way a proc Stamden builds. He was running 45k health in the no CP tests, or no proc tests, building a decent amount of mag recovery to sustain Arctic Blast, and he had no damage. He had no damage because he didn't have procs, and his sub-assault and his D-swing was doing next to nothing, but we couldn't really kill him because he had Arctic Blast, and he had all this crazy amounts of sustain, so he was tanky. And I was talking to Lobo, I'm like, Lobo, you know, for my video, I wanted to ask you a question. What do you think about this? If that guy right there, hypothetically, if 4 of them fought you right now in the no proc CP tests, could they kill you? And he goes, no, absolutely not. You know, 2k sub assaults, they're just not really lining up any burst. They, like, nothing's happening. I could survive 4 people. It's like, well, what if he was wearing procs? And he goes, oh yeah, I'd melt in a heartbeat. And that's the difference, is you just, in a proc meta, you just have so much free damage that, you know, the amount of numbers eventually goes away. Or it doesn't matter that, you know, you don't have enough proc damage to kill somebody 1v1. If you have a couple people, you're going to kill anybody, and you could build a tank and you could just, you know, win that way. And so it's fun because when you run across a 5-man group now, they have to actually kill you. They have to use skills and abilities to kill you, and if they're not very good defensively or offensively, they're going to get punished for it. And it's really enjoyable. It's enjoyable PvP. Whether I win or lose, I just respawn and I come back and I'm like, man, I wish my skills worked a little bit better, but this is a lot of fun. Yeah, procs make the tank meta worse, in my opinion, because it makes tanks more effective. You could still build tanky, and then you're just more effective. In a no proc meta, tanks just are useless. They don't do any damage. They don't provide any support. They're just tanky. And who cares about that guy in a 1vx situation? But in a proc situation, they're dishing out an unreal amount of damage that's really providing pressure in a situation that you don't really enjoy. So I'm actually enjoying this patch quite a bit, or these tests quite a bit for that reason. The meta is just a lot more fun. And what I was actually surprised about is the sets that they've dropped. I was a little bit concerned about tankiness, because Markarth, there are a lot of very tanky builds out there. You're going to get rid of proc sets. You're going to get rid of the high damage sets. The only really good damage sets that they gave us were Spinners and Spriggans. Everything else has kind of fallen to the wayside, like Hunding's Rage, Shacklebreaker. All these sets are old sets, and they're just not as much damage as a bunch of the sets that they removed. And so I'm like, holy crap, with the addition of all this stuff, are we going to be able to kill somebody during these tests? And the answer is yes, because people don't have, also, they got rid of all the powerful defensive sets, the super powerful ones. Not only the high resistance ones, the ones that give you major protection, you know, like Daedra Trickery and my favorite sets, Crimson, not just sets like that, but Malabeth, Engine Guardian, Troll King, Juggernaut, all these other conditional sets that proc based off of missing health that automatically save you conditionally also don't exist in PvP. And so, because both of those things got removed, the top end offensive and defensive sets, it actually has made PvP quite enjoyable. I'm able to kill most people, and being able to kill most people in PvP is a good thing. I know that gets some backlash from some people, but that's what I found so far, and I just find that way more enjoyable. The other thing is, and I mean this in the nicest way possible, guys, because I need to explain this to you, but we essentially, with these tests, have moved back 3 or 4 years in the game, probably about 4 years. ZeniMax came out and said, hey, you know, all the sets that we've introduced with new DLCs and new patches from the last 4 or 5 years, we're removing all of them, and almost all of them, and you're going back to square one. And it's a stark contrast, because I have an Xbox account and I have a PC account, and so I can hop on Xbox and I can play Markarth 2020 Markarth, and then I can hop on PC and I can experience 2015 ESO, and it's crazy. The differences are crazy, and I mean this in the nicest way possible, but we are all carried in PvP, guys. We are all carried, and I want to explain my point is all of the best sets are proc conditional sets. And think about what the best sets you're running are, and some of us are less carried than others, obviously. But I've worn Malabeth quite a bit. You don't realize how powerful Malabeth is until all of a sudden you don't have to deal with it, or you don't wear it anymore. You don't realize how powerful Troll King is until all of a sudden you don't have to fight it anymore. Earthgore, all these other sets where you're fighting people and they're just not conditionally getting saved because the game is allowing them to get saved. They don't exist. These sets don't exist anymore. And so people have to actually rely on their own skills and abilities to save them. And it's fantastic. And I remember I was playing yesterday and I was getting involved in a fight, and it was a good fight. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking as I'm playing, and I'm like, why am I not getting mad? Because normally, like, when I'm getting chased by 8-10 people, I'm getting really frustrated. And it's because every time I go for a burst combination on people, they're not recovering instantly because their Earthgore or other sets aren't off cooldown, automatically saving them. And I started thinking about these defensive saving sets, and I'm like, how did we get here? How did we get to 2021 to where we have all these sets that exist in the game? Because it's been 5 years in the making. How did we get here? And so this is the thing that I wanted to talk, one of the things I wanted to talk about in this video, because I have some thoughts. I have some theories. So the game's existed for a while. The forums have been out for a while. And as is the case with all forums, people like to complain. Well, what do people like to complain about? They like to complain about what killed them. It doesn't matter what day you hop into any forum. If D-Swing kills somebody, they're going to go to the forums and complain about D-Swing. D-Swing, Snipe, Crystal Fragment, Surprise Attack. Think about, and you know I'm right, because if you've been around the game for a while, look at how many times all these skills that I'm mentioning have been adjusted. Snipe has been adjusted 4 or 5 times since the beginning of when I've played. Same thing with Surprise Attack. Same thing with D-Swing. Remember when D-Swing used to have Empower and the Knockup? And some of you guys are like, what are you talking about? Remember when Empower used to buff everything besides just light and heavy attacks? Some of you guys are like, what the fuck are you talking about? I know. These things get adjusted a lot. And you know why? Because the way a lot of adjustments happen on the forums is based off of complaints. The more people complain, the more likely something is to get adjusted. Look at Pirate Skeleton from a couple years ago. Pirate Skeleton existed that way for over a year. It was broken in that way for well over a year. It only eventually got adjusted because people got on the forums and they complained about it, and it got complained about so much that it eventually got adjusted. All these things getting these adjustments, Surprise Attack, Snipe, Crystal Frags, all these different offensive abilities getting adjusted are probably because of complaints, in my opinion. In my opinion, that's what it is. People are complaining about different skills and abilities. ZeniMax goes and they nerf it. All of a sudden it's underperforming and the class is unplayable. So then they go back and buff it, and then they over buff it, and then people complain about it again, and the cycle just recycles. We just go all over again with all these different adjustments. And we can never just stand pat with all these different abilities. Those are just offensive skills. And so you have people complaining about different offensive abilities. Well, eventually ZeniMax comes to a point and they're like, well, we can't keep nerfing these skills. We can't keep nerfing these skills. We've already nerfed them last patch. Do we need to nerf them again? I got an idea. Let's introduce some sets. Let's introduce some sets that will randomly heal you, or randomly protect you, or randomly do this based off of your missing health, so that people can complete dungeon content and whatever. And it's going to help people. It's going to alleviate our inboxes on the forums from complaints from newer, inexperienced players. And so they introduce sets like Earthgore and Malabeth and buff the heal on Engine Guardian and all these other sorts of things. And the thing is those sets don't get adjusted as quickly as offensive sets because people don't complain about tanks as much as they complain about stuff that kills them. That's the problem that we have that exists. And so over the years, you have all these things. ZeniMax is introducing these defensive and offensive sets because they can't keep nerfing offensive abilities. So they keep incorporating all these different defensive sets, defensive capabilities. And then we just slowly just have tanky metas. And I've talked about this a lot, but there's a lot of aspects to why we're in a tanky meta. And I thought a lot of it was defensive mechanics. Hell, I was on a podcast a couple weeks ago with JTK Gaming, and we were talking about what I would like to see. And one of the things I said was I would like to see offensive mechanics, reduce cast times on ultimates, get removed so that they counter the capabilities of defensive mechanics. And although I still want to see that happen, I overvalued, after playing these tests, I overvalued defensive mechanics, and I should be looking more at proc defensive sets because they're way more of a culprit of the even though I brought it up, they're way more of a culprit of the defensive tanky meta that we exist in, is because we have all these crutch defensive save me sets that just protect people, and they let fights just randomly, they let people randomly get saved based off of RNG. We've all been there. I've been CC'd on the ground, unable to CC break because of lag, and guess what saved me? Good old trusty Malabeth. And I don't blame anybody for wearing these sets. I don't blame anybody for wearing the strongest stuff. Why wouldn't you wear a set that's literally going to save your life in PvP? Why wouldn't you? But the problem is why does that exist in the game? Why does that set exist? And it just kind of reminds me, what's an else video without a fun comparison? But it reminds me of a bad relationship, right? Like, your relation starts off with a significant other and it's going great. You know, you go through the honeymoon phase where you really like each other, and then you realize at some point you love each other, and then slowly things just start changing. I'm talking about the bad relationships, guys. Like, in a healthy relationship, give and take should exist. Like, you should be changing for the better. I'm talking about the relationship where one side basically wants to change every aspect of who you are as a person, and they won't concede on anything. They don't care. They're always right, you're always wrong, and they're constantly just nibbling and chipping away at your foundation. Yes, nibbling. Concrete foundation. They don't care. They want that foundation gone. So you do anything for them, and you wake up, and all of a sudden one day you're at a bar with your significant other, and you look in the reflection, and you catch yourself, you're wearing a pair of Oakleys, soul patch, and blonded tips. And at one point you were a person. You were yourself. You were your own you. And now you're just a bastardized version of Guy Fieri. Except the problem is, you know, you're not the millionaire philanthropist that Guy Fieri has. You don't have a 5-star restaurant. You know, it's just not going to work for you. That look is not going to work for you. That's not you. That's him. And so you wake up and you look at yourself and you're like, holy crap. That's what this entire test feels like for me. I woke up and my characters on Xbox feel like Guy Fieri. No offense to Guy Fieri. I think he's an awesome person. I don't mean it in that way. But yeah, it just feels so much different. It's just a more enjoyable PvP experience because, yeah, you just don't have RNG saving procs and you don't have RNG kill people procs. It's fucking fantastic. And I know I just swore there. Not supposed to swear in YouTube videos. I don't care. This test is fantastic. And I'm going to have a hard time going back. I'm going to have a hard time going back to dealing with all these different defensive sets. Like, oh man, I shouldn't have done damage there and tried to kill that guy because he just had his proc monster set go off and heal himself to full. That's the stuff that's really annoying. And so when I look at these tests, yes, performance hasn't gotten better. It just hasn't. And I'd like to, like I said, I'd like to see some improvements in that one direction. But some good things have come out of it. Number one, we figured out, we found the core of the tank meta. We found out the core crux of the tank meta, which is proc sets. Not just proc damage sets, proc healing sets. When all these sets are removed, people die. People actually die in PvP all the time. Fights don't go on forever because they just randomly have a set proc on them. And so regardless of what happens with performance, and we'd all like to see performance get improved. And I've even made this claim on my channel that I would go through any meta as long as performance is good. It's also, let's just be honest, guys, it's nice to just have a good meta. It's really nice to have a good meta. You know, it's like another bad analogy. You're like, you know what? I'd rather have bad sex than have no sex at all. Well, guess what? Good sex is still better, right? And if, never mind, I'm not going to go that far. I know. We're going to keep this in here. But anyways, my point is a good meta is more fun. And it's just more enjoyable. Win or lose, I'm having a lot more fun when the game works on PC right now. And hopefully ZeniMax takes a look at all these sets and they change kind of how they conditionally function. You know, maybe we can slowly chip away at that foundation, and we can introduce longer cooldowns on life-saving sets to where they're not going off every 30 seconds or every ult dump cycle, so that people aren't just inherently living, not because they're good players, but because they have a set that's designed to save them. So yeah, that's going to be the end of this video. If you guys have any questions or comments, please provide in the section below. Like I said, when I mean carried, I don't mean like we're bad players. It's just you don't realize how big of a difference these sets are until all of a sudden you don't have them anymore. And then you're not fighting against them and you're like, holy crap. I knew people were getting saved, but I didn't realize they were getting saved like this. And so, yeah, that's going to be in this video. If you guys have any questions or comments, please provide it in the section below. I will do my best to answer it. As always, guys, thank you for watching. Have a nice day.